Hello everybody. My name is Marion Chitty. I'm really fortunate and excited to share my local history with you all. I was born on October 2nd in 1861, the fifth of 7 children to Frederick Chitty and Susan Storer Chitty. My father was born in Birmingham, England, and served as a captain in the Peninsular War. He emigrated to Glens Falls in the late 1840s and married my mother in 1852. I was just a year old when my father left home to fight for the Union in the Civil War, and after my father returned home from the war, he became involved in a number of business enterprises and served in the New York State Legislature in Albany. My mother's grandfather, Anson Comstock, settled in Glens Falls in the 1790s, where he built a large brick house in what was then Queensbury. In fact, part of this parcel of land would later become part of this very cemetery. He built a sprawling house at 15 Bay on the corner of Maple Street. My grandmother, Anson's daughter, Sally Comstock, married my grandfather, Ebenezer Storer, who was of a well-known New England family that were wealthy merchants and mast makers in colonial times. My grandparents believed that women should be educated and sent my mother and her sister to the Troy Female Seminary, established by renowned educator Emma Willard. In the spring of 1847, my mother relocated to Charleston, South Carolina to teach at Miss Dupree's Academy for 2 years, and then took a 1-year teaching position at South Carolina Female Collegiate Institute in Birmingham. It should come to no surprise that my siblings and I were exposed to the finer things in life and were educated and well-read. I followed in my mother's footsteps and became a teacher. I taught music in New York City and in Glens Falls. While in the city, I had the opportunity to pursue my interest in history at the New York Public Library. I wrote articles about New York State's historical sites and houses, and wrote for the New York Historical Association's journal, of which I was a member. But most importantly, I worked on tracing the genealogy of my forebearers. After the death of my parents, I returned to Glens Falls to live with my brothers, Corder and Charles, at the family home on Bay Street. Charles's daughter, Helen Grace Chitty, had an interest in dramatics, of which I enjoyed mentoring her on. Although I did not live long enough to see her perform with the Glens Falls Operetta Club, I knew she was going to be successful as an actress. Well, I hope you won't think I'm bragging about my accomplishments, but I was one of the founders of the Glens Falls Historical Society, along with Charles West and Frederick Richards. I spoke at meetings of the New England Women and the DAR. I also wrote many articles for the New York Genealogy Society. I would often spend weeks at a time in Albany at the State Education Building's library, researching old families and houses of the Queensbury area. In 1933, I was honored to be one of 6 women to participate in President Roosevelt's administration project, Historic American Building Survey, where delineators and historians were hired to photograph and document buildings in each state nationwide. During my research of the Gansevoort Mansion, I made an extraordinary discovery of a manuscript leaf in Herman Melville's hand. By 1920s, my family had bought the Champlin House on Upper Glen Street. It was a 1790s farmhouse in the vicinity of Halfway Brook. I continued to live there until my death on November 2nd in 1948. I was 87 years old. While I was a well-known historian for New York State, it was the keeper of my family's history that I was most proud of. I ask that when you return to your homes today, you look into who your ancestors were, if you haven't done so already. I believe that by knowing where we came from, we will know where we will be going. Thank you. Have a great day.